Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk a Good Game, where it's the match preview for Wales versus England. You've got two Englishmen and Irishmen. Basically, I've done everything I can to avoid a Welsh person being on. I did ask, but everyone I know who's Welsh told me very clearly that they're not up for doing it, which is very fair. Gonzo, it's very fair because I don't know if I would want to
You
be
did
in this
ask.
situation.
I can confirm that because I even saw him asking he asked in the Hammers chat
Yeah, I did that as
patron
well. Yeah.
WhatsApp addicts group. Any Welshmen in here?
Yeah,
Um,
so apparently, much like the theme of their World Cup, they just don't want to be there.
oh, I'm glad he said that. The Irishman can say that, right?
Yeah, with me and Gonzo, of course, Gio's not here, so I thought we did need to represent at least one of the other nations that isn't England. So we've got Irish
We
Tommy.
have to have a Celt. You've got to have a Celt on the show.
How are you, sir? How are you, Tommy?
Very good, my friends. Very good. And yeah, it's so weird. I thought you'd sent me the message accidentally, because I know I'm not Welsh, and I thought, oh Christ, what's an Irishman on
Yeah,
for?
my name's Irish Tommy.
He was gave a Welsh Tommy. That's just lower down in the phone, isn't it? Welsh Tommy.
Yeah, I mean, he's even worse than I am.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got Tommy, Irish, Tommy, well,
Quite
it's
right.
the way you have to separate these things. But we'll start with you, Tommy. What's your thoughts on the Welsh national team?
From what I've seen so far in the first couple of games, a very limited side, I have to say. They look like a team that has some names in there that at one time were like very good, players at club and international level that could do something. But it just looks like a tournament too far. Like the legs aren't there anymore, and the shine has gone off it. The names are there, but they just can't live up to those names anymore. And I think particularly from what I've seen, I think Bale and Ramsey almost are just making up the numbers in the 11 at this point. I don't think they should be on the pitch for Wales anymore. I don't think they bring much of anything to the team. I think Rob Page has made a huge error in playing them both in both games. I'll be honest. Look, and I'm not disparaging what they've done in the game. Obviously, in their prime, both very, very good footballers, particularly Gareth Bale, who's done amazing things, in his career. But it's now, and in 2022, they're a shadow of what they used to be. And I think there are other players in the Welsh squad that have been there and done that, as it were. And I just think the legs are going, and they can't play the way they used to. So on paper, you could make a case for Wales and say, yeah, they're potentially a tricky side that could do something. But you'd only be doing that on paper. I think the reality of this Welsh side we've seen on the pitch, and it's not great for them. I don't think Rob Page has helped himself or his country by continuing to play Bale and Ramsey particularly. I just don't think they can do it anymore. They're both a shadow of the player that they once were. And so I think because of that, it's just a very limited Welsh team that is showing it in the struggles that they're having in their opening couple of games. I mean, the reversal the other day was a really bad reversal for them to lose that game 2-0, albeit two late goals. But even in the kind of 90 minutes before that, they weren't showing an awful lot of promise, Wales. They're just not a very good side, and I'm not surprised that they're struggling, to be completely honest.
I think I think the manager's probably a bit second rate anyway, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think he's got a tough job on his hands because there's the old adage, no player is bigger than XYZ. We've seen it recently with Ronaldo, the big thing. Ronaldo's, in fact, I think that's a tough one. I'm not sure that's as cut and dried as it might seem. No one's bigger than Manchester United. Well, Ronaldo might be, actually, particularly when you look at how famous. He might be more famous than Manchester United, actually. So
He's
anyway,
probably got more Instagram followers. We can give you that much.
He probably has. But anyway, I understand that usually that is true. However, I don't think it's true with Wales. With the football team, I would certainly agree that no player is better than the Welsh rugby team. Absolutely, that as an institution, that's that's bigger than any one player. Certainly, we've seen that many times. Football team. I'm not so sure if the Wales football team is bigger than Gareth Bale. In fact, I'd say it almost certainly isn't. So, with that in mind, I think it's difficult for the manager, particularly one who's not blessed with great talent as a manager, for him to be able to really stamp his authority and say, actually, I'm removing this icon from the team. I don't think he can do it. So I think actually the onus is a little bit on Bale himself. And I understand. I think Jonathan Barnett might be his agent, quite possibly. I think I understand his stance, which is I'm going to stick around at Real Madrid even when I'm not wanted, and just because I should, because he had been a brilliant player for them, an absolutely brilliant player for Real Madrid. I don't think he was well treated. However, what I think he's not done is he's not stayed at that competitive edge which you need. Now, I'm pretty sure that he's got relatively good fitness. So I think the idea that he would then go to the US and actually just the whole point of going to the US was a little bit of money, because I think he could have earned money wherever he went, but it was to keep ticking over, ahead of the World Cup. And I don't think you can just tick over ahead of World Cup. He'd been much better served. He was out of contract, signed a 1-year deal with a Premier League team. Anyone, not in Forest, would have taken him. Absolutely not in Forest would have taken Gareth Bale. They're buying everyone else. Why not one more? And I think he would have gone there, and I think he would have played, and at the very least, he'd have been up to Premier League pace. And I think he would have gone there in better shape. Now, no, it's normally it wouldn't all be down to one player, but I just think when you're dealing with Wales, it probably is. And I've seen Wales compared with Portugal in that regard, that they're a million miles apart. Portugal have a wealth of talent who I'm not going to list, but Portugal have a wealth of talent playing at the very top clubs around Europe. Wales are heavily reliant on Gareth Bale, and just the rest of them are just there really to support him. But I think it's been taken a step too far. They've got some good players. They've got the big lump up front, Moore, who can be a handful on his day. Dan James, I don't think started recently. He's very, very quick, but the central midfield leaves a lot to be desired. I think Davis, who plays for Tottenham, is a very good player, by the way. But these are not game-changing players. Davis might be their best player, actually, but he's not going to change the game at left centre-back, or wherever they deploy him. Let's be perfectly honest. But they'll come again, because they'll at some point, Wales will have, I've seen plenty. Ryan Giggs, as you mentioned earlier, Ian Rush, Mark Hughes, John Charles before them. There will be another superstar along for Wales at some point, and they'll sort of do all right, because some of their clubs play in the English league, so they're not as... There's every chance that Swansea can get promoted, that Cardiff can get promoted at any given time, play in the Premier League, so they're sort of... Their academies can reap the benefits of being English-based, basically, and all that comes with it. So they're not actually subject to the same, I guess, the same disadvantages that Scotland are as a nation, because if you can get up into the Premier League and you can get that Category A status as an academy, then you can do, pretty damn well. So they'll always be able to produce decent-ish young players, Wales. But yeah, no surprise that they're struggling, I guess.
I think it's not. It's a situation where it's not your granddad's Wales. It's not just Ryan Giggs and James Collins anymore. They have got a lot of decent players. I mean, looking at their last lineup, Hennessy played for Forest, Mepham, Bournemouth, Joe Rodden he's on loan in League One from Spurs at the moment. Ben Davis, as you said, from Spurs. Roberts, who I think plays for Burnley. But then you've got Ramsey, who plays for League One and East, but he's Aaron Ramsey. Ethan Ampadu, who's on loan in Serie A from Chelsea. You've got Harry Wilson, Fulham. You've got Williams, who plays for... Who's Decker Williams play for? Forest. You got Kefamore, Bournemouth. You got Gareth Bale, and that doesn't even include Dan James, Brennan Johnson, Joe Allen, Danny Ward. I mean, they've got a fair few good players. They've got a good Premier League. They've got a core group of Premier League, almost an entire squad of Premier League players at this point. And I think the problem is a little bit that reliance a little bit on Ramsey and Bale, and I think Bale especially. You see it at any club. I mean, if you don't have a striker, especially if you don't have a striker or a forward who's doing well, then you might as well not turn up in a lot of instances in terms of trying to win games. And that's Wales's biggest problem, is getting over that hump. I think you've got a fairly decent team there. Like Mepham, Rodden, and Davis. Don't get me wrong; it's not exactly the best defensive trio you're ever going to see in your life. No one's writing home about that and thinking it's incredible, but it's significantly better than some of the other ones you see in the tournament. And so they'll manage to stop teams scoring fine, but it's more a case of, you know, anything else. And if you're playing someone like Gareth Bale who isn't there, if you're playing Aaron Ramsey,
yeah, you've essentially got two passengers in midfield.
yeah,
They really are. I mean, I've watched both games that Wales have played, and I mean, the decline in Bale is actually, it's hard to watch. Actually, I mean, Bale is at the point now. His touch is deserting him. His passing has gone to pot, and you know he's not getting up and down the pitch. You know, he's lost that. I mean, he was obviously when he came through. I mean, at Tottenham, when he went to Tottenham and started, I remember a game Tottenham played in the Champions League against Inter Milan where he just absolutely destroyed them, almost single-handedly in both legs. He destroyed Inter Milan. A very, very special player, and it's hard to watch him now. Actually, he's just such a shadow of the player that he was, and I think Rob Page, he won't do it. I expect Ramsey and Bale will start against England, but he should have the, shall we say, cojones to see it and say, look, you've given amazing service to Wales, but it's just not working right now. It's just not happening for us in midfield, and we can't afford to have that happen against England. We've got to get something here. We've got to get something. We've got to try and win this game, and we've got to get some energy into that midfield. You know, okay, you may not have the name of Bale or Ramsey, but what they will have is energy and drive, maybe some pace, depending on the player, and you'll actually get some bite in the middle of that field. Because at the moment, I think, for me, I think if I see Bale and Ramsey starting, I think he's essentially handing that game to England, in my opinion.
I mean, with Bale specifically, whether he could have remained competitive or not, I think it's one of those situations where here's a guy who obviously was once absolutely brilliant, one of the best players in the world in his peak, but unfortunately he's just had injury after injury that's completely ravaged him. Not unlike Harry Kane at the moment. Speaking of team news, I mean, Harry Kane has looked injured seemingly forever at this point. He played the full 90 minutes. He may or may not start. We'll get onto that in a second. Kyle Walker will probably be back fully fit. James Maddison is back in training for England. And then from a Wales perspective, Wayne Hennessy shan't start. He got a red card, which means you'll see Big Danny Ward in gold, I would suspect. Speaking of old men, Joe Allen could make his way back to starting for Wales as well. He's back fully fit. Let's all pretend he still plays for Liverpool. He can pass the ball, Gonzo. I don't know if you've seen it. And that's about basically it. He has good hair as well, but apart from that,
he's a bit like myself in many respects.
I've often said he is the Welsh Gonzo. I've said it many a time.
Yeah.
And any other big constitution for them is whether Kiefer Moore starts up front, just because of their lack of goals. You might see James come in, for example, could see Brennan Johnson start. But let's talk about Harry Kane. Gonzo, he played the full 90 minutes. We've sort of had these rumours the entire time that he was injured and that it might not happen and maybe rested everything else. He plays 90 minutes, then he gets pictured, I think it was something on his ankle in training or something. What do we do? What do we do from an English perspective?
I don't think England are anywhere near confident. But look, if he's injured, he can't play. It's as simple as that. And he shouldn't play. And to watch, I mean, Tommy said watching Gareth Bale is painful to watch. I think watching Gareth Southgate is painful to watch. I'm not suggesting watching Gareth Bale isn't, but not because, like with that scenario, you're looking at somebody, Gareth Southgate, who had former glories, and you're now watching him struggle. You're just looking at someone struggle, and you're probably looking at him probably that doesn't know what to do with regard to Harry Kane in that position there. He's got to do something if he is injured, but England can't make too many changes because we've just discussed Wales. There's nothing to say that England are gonna beat Wales. He's put out such a muddled signal by playing like he had in the USA game and contrasting that to how he played in the Iran game. there's nothing to say we can beat Wales. So we should do. Don't get me wrong. But you want to see that your manager's got different ideas. And he doesn't, by the way. I mean, I discussed it with Tommy on his show straight away after the England game or an hour or so later on that evening. And I said about Gareth Southgate, I said that I was worried that actually he thought the answer to USA's pace was more pace. And he could see that Saka and Sterling were just getting done because USA were just as quick, if not quicker. And I thought that, and that was before I'd heard the interview. And I thought, actually, I thought you've got to use another attribute at some point. If you can't beat them for pace, then do something else. Some skill, some brains, some brawn, something. Slow the game down and do something different. And I thought this, because I said this to you, Tommy, and I hadn't heard the interview at the time. Then I heard the press conference. And the guy asked him, he said, why did you bring Rashford on and not Phil Foden? And he turned around and he said, we just thought that Rashford's pace would be of some benefit to us. Well, he ain't got a clue. It was what I suspected. I didn't want him to say it, but I knew it. I knew it. He thought the answer to Anthony Robinson's pace was Rashford, who might be slightly quicker than Saka. Saka's not slow. The issue was that you kept on going for pace. That, Anthony Robinson's a limited footballer. First touch, terrible. I almost used the first touch analogy then. He got a very bad touch. Let's put it that way. So
first touch of a trampoline is what you're saying.
There you go.
Solid.
Very nice. That's the one I was going to say.
That's
Excellent.
why we brought you here, Tommy.
Excellent.
Good work. Good work.
Excellent. So do something else. Get someone that can turn quicker. Get someone that can slow the ball up. Maybe not make him do something else. Take pace out of the equation. And the fact that he's watched that whole game and thought, more pace, more warp speed, Captain. Do you know what I mean? But, oh my word! So I think the thing is, I'm not sure he's got the answer to anything, Charlie. Even something as simple as Harry Kane's out. Not that he hasn't had. I don't know how long Southgate's been in the job, but not how he hasn't had 7-8 years to think about what he might do. But there he is, scratching his head. What should we do now? Harry's out.
Tommy, what do you think, Harry Kane?
Yeah, look, he's clearly not right. Again, you can see in his movement isn't there. When you see Harry Kane in full flow for Tottenham, when he's fully fit, I mean, he's got some pace. Actually, speak about pace, Gonzo. I mean, he's got some pace. The runs he makes are brilliant. He's always looking to get in behind, gets on the ball, turns sharply, drives. He can play a great pass. Obviously, him and Son dovetail brilliantly for Tottenham. That Harry Kane has been absent for England this World Cup. He's sluggish. He struggles to really make an impact or get involved in things. He's clearly not right. And again, I said it about Rob Page previously with Bale and Ramsey. He's not helping himself here, Southgate, whatsoever. It's clear that Kane is not right. If he's not right, he's not the only striker. There's nothing wrong given the opposition in England's group stage with playing Wilson. I mean, Wilson's fit. He's having a really good season so far for Newcastle. He looks sharp. He knows where the goal is. And he is a player who will make those runs in behind. He'll always be looking to get in behind. Kane can't really seem to do that at the moment. He just doesn't have that sprint in him. He's just not lively enough right now. And I think it's just too easy for opponents to mark Kane out of the game and just keep him quiet. He's a non-entity. So I think Gareth Southgate, it's not the only problem Southgate's had in this World Cup. I think, like you, Gonzo, I think he's got a number of things wrong. Now, formation-wise, I don't particularly care. I don't get hung up on formations. I think you can win in any formation if you're tactically right and the setup is correct and the attitude is correct. And I think almost all of those things are wrong at the moment with England. I think Southgate is just innately cautious as a manager, and it's not helping England. I mean, he has one of the very best squads in world football. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And I just don't mean starting 11. I mean squad. He's got some really top-class players there. And to set up, I feel I could be talking about West Ham here.
Yeah.
And to set up so cautiously is kind of mind-boggling to me. And as well, I think I agree with you on the pace issue, Gonzo, as well. I think the game against the USA, I think, was crying out for the likes of Grealish and Foden. It's mind-boggling to me that those players are sat on the bench. I think particularly Foden. I think Foden's an incredible player. If you want to unlock a defence, I think Foden is the best player you've got in your squad at doing that.
It's the best we've had since Gaza.
Yeah, exactly. Best since Gascoigne. I mean, he can skip past two players in an instant. Couple of touches and he's gone. He's in behind or he's gotten down to the touchline. He can pull the ball back. He's such a nightmare to deal with for defenders. He's got such quick feet and he turns really quickly. He doesn't have any particular pace, but you don't need pace when you're Phil Foden. And he's the kind of player that can open teams up. Grealish the same, to a lesser extent, but Grealish also is a player who can do that. I mean, Grealish came on against the US, instantly started winning free kicks, started committing defenders instantly, winning free kicks. They had no choice but to bring him down or let him go, and they started bringing him down. And, I mean, if you've got Foden and Grealish doing that, for even if it's for 75 minutes to burn themselves out, 80 minutes, whatever, they can both probably play 90. But even if you've got them on there for 75, 80 minutes, I mean, they are going to create opportunities for their teammates to score goals. They may even not come in themselves.
As well, one of Grealish's qualities, one of his really good qualities, is he makes a defender think they got a chance. Because he slows the game down and he shows them a bit of the ball. So what happens? He draws defenders to him. You'll see. Watch Grealish play. Defenders start to swarm towards him because they'll think, "Oh, no, we'll have a bit of that. We'll have a bit of that ball." They invariably don't get it. They'll foul him. He move it just before they get the ball. But what he also does is, if there's players swarming towards him, it creates space inside him. You see it so often, and it's not a massive. I totally agree with what you say about formation. By the way, Tommy, if the intent is right. You could pick an attacking formation and make it look defensive if the intent is wrong. If the intent's right, so it's actually just about creating those 2-on-1s. And if you do that, then you've created space for somebody else. And Grealish really does that. And, if you could play Grealish, the thing that Southgate said, I'm not going to play Foden next. He doesn't play there for his club. Okay, he hasn't played there for his club this season because of Haaland. But actually, Foden has spent the majority of his career, I would suggest, for that under-17 final when England won the World Cup, he's spent the majority of his career playing in central positions, actually. A lot of it for Man City has been playing there. And, okay, if that's your ethos, if that's the rationale, why isn't it applied to everybody else? Why would you take that stance with Phil Foden? Because, actually, what is it? Make the rule. Is it about you playing for your club? Or is it not? Because Harry Maguire's not playing for his club at all. And last time I saw him play, he was playing on the right side of defence as well, by the way. Because you had the little fella playing on the left side of defence for Man U. So I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about in many respects.
It's excuses. It's excuses, Gonzo. Because, not playing Foden and Grealish is a head scratcher for everybody. And so when England have a poor result, and then the obvious questions are going to be asked in the press and in interviews after the game. And so in his head, he's got to justify having an incredible player who can unlock a defence like Phil Foden sitting on the bench when they're struggling to create chances. And so he's got to come up with some bullcrap, for the press to justify bizarre decisions. And he's clutching at straws with that stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong. Look, Mason Mount is a fine player. Nothing against Mason Mount whatsoever. But, I mean, that game was crying out for Phil Foden in the number 10 role. Yeah. Absolutely crying out for it. It was a no-brainer. And so it's just excuse-making, really. It'll be interesting to see his response of the Wales game. If he does throw Foden in there and Grealish in there. I don't know that he will. I think he seems like the kind of manager to me who's more inclined to dig his heels in and put the same team out, play Mount, and then try and go and get a win and then say, see, I told you it was fine. I told you it was fine playing these players and approaching the game in the way I do. See, we got a win. We're out the group. We're top. Everything's fine. Everything's hunky-dory. But it's going to come back to bite him. It's really going to come back to bite him unless he gets a wake-up call, either gives himself one or gets one from his coaching staff. It's going to be England's undoing. And my fear for England is that because of his approach to games, because of his kind of blindness to obvious issues, that he's going to waste an awful lot of talent that he has at his disposal. And this talent doesn't stay around long. It passes you by quite quickly, because World Cups only come around every 4 years. And you can very quickly find a team that's incredibly good and has the potential to go and win a World Cup, not get near one.
I think part of the thing with Southgate is I don't think he'll be here after this tournament unless we win it. Then I don't think he'll be here after this tournament. But I think it is that defensive first nature that has made him a success at England, and I don't think he's going to change that anytime soon. I think if you look at the previous tournament, and I think actually, to be fair, probably the previous tournament's part of the issue to some extent, because I think it's given us all confidence that we can go on and do something in a major tournament. I think if you'd asked us before that tournament, we'd be like, I don't know if we could. Whereas now we look at it and go, no, not only do we have the players, because this isn't the first time England have had a great team. England have had great teams before, but this is the first time where we've seen to have a great team that have actually gone on to do significant things in tournaments. And like you say, I think after this tournament, regardless of changes necessary, because you look at the talent, you just go, right, what's the best fit for the talent that's there? And then you work your way from there. Because I do think he will continue to be Gareth Southgate. I do think he'll continue to play his defensive first football, his solid defensive football, because that's what he's built his success at England on. That's what he's become one of the best England managers in a long time on, is playing like that. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. And when you look at it through that lens, I get why he doesn't play Foden or Grealish. I understand, because he looks at it and he's probably like, Grealish, I would be concerned he's going to lose the ball or just try and take it a bit further forward and fall over, whatever. Like, I get it from his perspective.
It's David Moyes syndrome, though. It's David Moyes 100%
syndrome. Is. I don't think it's a surprise.
Sterling has done a really good job for him in the past and in previous tournaments, and that's all he sees. He doesn't see the now. He sees Sterling as someone that I have and can rely on. He's done it for me in the past. So we're getting into this situation, the same as we have with the Moyes, with the likes of Bowen and Souček, where you start to flog a dead horse. And I come back to it. He needs a wake-up call to say, okay, look, Sterling and Mount, yes, fine players. They've done a job for me. But look, this is 2022. And going forward in this tournament, the best way for us, as in, I'm talking as Gareth Southgate now. I haven't just switched to being English.
Change your name on my phone to Tommy,
English Tommy.
Or English Tommy, yeah. But I'll be English Tommy for the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
But I think we see this all the time with managers. I don't understand it. Managers seem to have this kind of blind spot when it comes to players. I'm sure probably fans of every club can talk to you about this manager and that manager who had these particular blind spots when it came to certain players or certain approaches tactically, where they just couldn't get off it. That they just couldn't make the switch, even though it seemed really apparent to everybody else. And we got to the point at West Ham, of course, with Moyes, where he's actually taken a pop at the fans when he took Benrahma off and was booed for it. Where his blind spot is so much so that he thinks, no, that 60,000 people in there are all wrong. I'm right. And Gareth Southgate is in danger now of throwing away a potential World Cup win because he just can't get around this blind spot when it comes to the likes of Sterling and Mount, and when it comes to his defense-first approach. And I think you can have, ironically, you can play relatively cautiously, because I think in tournament football, like in World Cups and in the Euros, I think it's very, very important that you're stingy at the back. I think it's very important. I think in any tournament football, if you're stingy at the back, you give yourself a chance. You give yourself a chance. We've seen it previously with the likes of, in the Euros, with the likes of Denmark and Greece. Both of those teams were really stingy at the back. They weren't great going forward, didn't score too many. but they were able to go and win tournaments because of it. But England have this amazing luxury right now where you can be really stingy at the back. You got very good defenders, really good midfield in front of them, but you also have these incredible players up front who have silky feet, who can do brilliant things on the ball, who can stretch defenses from situations that don't appear where there's much on. They can make something happen. They can skip past a couple of players. They can win fouls, win you lots of corners, and he won't put them on the pitch because of this. He has to get over it, in my opinion, if England are to fulfill their potential and maybe go and win this thing.
Confident Gonzo?
What, confident of winning the game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah. All that being said, I do think so. I mean, it's been a good opportunity to have a whinge up about Gareth Southgate because I think it's hard to understand it, which I think makes you want to complain about it. And I think we are also feeding a lot of West Ham frustrations into it. But yes, we should be beating Wales. It's not even just a West Ham one, by the way. This is for an Englishman. This is frustration of Glenn Hoddle not playing as much as he should, Gaza being discarded too early, Matt Letizia getting one cap, John Barnes not being utilised correctly, and any number. People will be saying, going back to Osgood and people like that, Rodney Marsh, people will be the genius. We are not good at dealing with that in this country. Not just football, by the way, cricket. A lot of genius cricketers get discarded. Got a manager at the moment, the rugby union team. By the time he's finished, Cipriani, the greatest player of his generation, the Gaza of rugby, basically, if you like, Cipriani will be too old to play anymore. We do not in this country handle genius well at all.
That's why people don't like me.
This is exactly. That's what they say, Charlie. That's what they say. We managed to harness it at Hammers Chat. Find an environment for you to flourish, which is
Photoshop specifically.
Fair play, yeah. Hammers Chat have pushed the boat out and said, he doesn't really look the part, but trust me, he can play.
Absolutely, this is exactly right.
Don't put him in front of camera. Problems. Put him in front of Premiere Pro and Photoshop, mate. He's a whiz.
Lovely.
Let him loose.
Kind.
The Adobe Creative Suite. He's on it. He's on it.
He gleams. He absolutely gleams. So I think there's a lot of frustration which gets born out of that. The golden generation, as they call it. To make a decision, just make a bloody decision. You cannot just either find a system with Scholes, Lampard, and Gerrard, or discard one of them, whatever. Do something. But again, it's a frustration. You end up Scholes, who might have been the best of the lot. If you were to speak to European players, if you speak to Guardiola, if you speak to Zidane, you speak to Xavi, a lot of these players that we hold in high esteem.
Iniesta
they would probably all tell you that Scholes was the best player, right? So, so he gets shoved to the left wing, and he gets so frustrated he retires from international football. So there's so much frustration feeds in to this thing with Gareth Southgate that we're looking at and thinking, oh, not again. Come on, not again. Look, if he's going to play a 3 behind Harry Kane, almost the world and his wife knows that it should be Saka, Foden, and Grealish should be that front 3. It's just he has other ideas. As you say, Mount is a decent enough player, but he does everything half a second slower. He's not as bright as Foden, and his pass is not got the same vision, and it happens half a second later. Well, that's the stuff that makes a difference at the top level. Actually, that half a second is what it's all about. By the way, I'm confident of beating Wales, but he needs to show us a little something. I also think for him and for the squad as well. Otherwise, he's going to. But I think this is about David Moyes. David Moyes finished his career with regret. I should have done that differently. Don't do it. Don't have the regret. Just don't have the regret. Go out and do it. Actually, and I look at it. Do you want to be, when you finish your career, a Sam Allardyce, or do you want to be a Harry Redknapp? Harry Redknapp has a relegation or 3 on his CV, but let's be fair. Go look at that FA Cup. You know what I mean? Don't have a regret. I think that's the thing. So I want to see more from England.
Tommy, what do you think about the game?
Yeah, I would be confident that England will get a result. I'd not be maybe quite as confident as Gonzo. After the last game, I mean, I think England should have accounted for the USA. Again, got some decent players. They're quite tidy. They move the ball around quite nicely. They got a couple of really good players, Pulisic particularly. But a team England should be beating. And England were really not good in that game. So obviously, I have that in the back of my head, ahead of the Wales game, that if the same England turns up, that they potentially could get themselves in a little bit of bother. And so I would have that caveat. But I suppose if I'm laying my money on the table, then you have to put it on England. You'd be hoping, I suppose English people would be hoping, for a better performance. Whether we'll see a change in personnel remains to be seen, but certainly I think if he does throw on the likes of Foden and Grealish from the start, I think England will absolutely win the game. If he sticks with the same 11, England still should win it, and probably will, because as I say, Wales are a very limited side. But you know what it's like. This is going to be one of those kind of local derby cup tie kind of games, isn't it? And for all Wales' limitations, they could play above themselves in this game potentially, and play to their absolute peak, and cause more problems than you expect. So I'd be relatively confident that England should go and win this game, and probably will. But I still have that worry in the back of my mind. Again, it is Southgate. You might play the same team, same relatively cautious approach. England could be flat again, could play a Harry Kane who clearly isn't right. So there's the potential there for dropped points for England.
Do you think what we're saying in score-wise, Gonzo, we'll start with you. We see a Southgate special, last hurrah for Wales, a very exciting draw. What do you think?
Do you know what? It could well be a 0-0. It could well be a 0-0. I'm actually going, which is enough. I'm going for 0-0.
It's enough for England. Wales, of course, have to win. Tommy, anything different?
Yeah, Wales have got to win. And I think at some point in that game, Wales are going to have to come forward in more numbers than they might like to. They're going to have to throw some caution to the wind. Like Gonzo, I think it'll be a very tight game. He may well be right for most of the game. It may be a 0-0 for a long time. But I think at some point, Rob Page is going to have to chuck a couple of more attacking players on and start going for it, because they, like you say, they have to win this game. And I think that ultimately will be their undoing. Rob Page may be starting to throw caution to the wind at the time when the Grealishes and Fodens are coming on. And I think that could be their undoing. I think they might potentially ship a couple of late goals. So I'm going to go 2-0 England. 0-0 for a good while, I think, probably. And then once Wales have to start coming out, I think that's when England will pick them off and score a couple of goals.
I think it's a solid shout. I'm going to go for 5-4. It's going to be madness. You're not going to see non-stop just goals.
Beautiful.
A Bale hat trick.
There you go. Prove he's back.
3 penalties.
It's going to be crazy. Let us know what your score predictions are in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Hopefully with more group stage football. Who knows? Because otherwise, God knows what we're going to talk about.
I've got a clue.
I haven't got the foggiest. See you next time, everyone. Bye.